Well, hello. My name is Jim Coogan. I live in Sandwich, and I'm an author, also a retired school teacher. And I've written a number of books about Cape Cod, and I've also written some books for children. Recently, I came up with a new book, and it's based on an experience that I've had over the last couple of summers working at Shawm Crow State Forest. I think every writer writes from what he or she experiences, and I think that's been the story of my children's books. My last one was about a little seal who lived over in the harbor and came over from the boardwalk and went all the way up into the fish hatchery and had a wonderful meal there before she was taken away. That was in 2009. My experience at Shawm Crow State Forest produced this book because I was quite surprised to see the number of homeless people that actually have to spend the summer in a state park. They can't stay all summer in one of the parks, but they do move around between Miles Standish and Shawm Crow and Nickerson State Park. And these are people who have been displaced by summer rentals. They can get a winter rental, but they have to get out in the summertime. And it's a sad situation, particularly for children. And my experience that provoked me into putting this book together had to do with a little boy that I met at the park while I was mowing the grass. And he stopped me. He was on his bicycle, and he stopped me and pointed to a little turkey chick, obviously a sick little chick. And he had found this and obviously didn't want me to run the mower over the chick. So we talked about it, and he wondered why the hen, the mother, would have left this chick behind. And I had to tell him that, with a brood of perhaps 10 chicks, the mother has to concentrate on the healthy ones, and this one unfortunately got left behind, appeared to be sick. Well, this little boy who lived alone, his parents were working during the day, and he didn't have a whole lot to keep him busy. He was an only child, I think. He said, I'm going to take this turkey back to my tent and see if I can nurse it back to life. And he did that. And it made me think, first of all, of what does a young person, a young child do when he's all alone in a state park and doesn't have a real solid roof over his head and no one to play with. And I began thinking about how this story could go together. The little boy, the sick little turkey chick, and a friendship that develops that becomes very important to the boy. So, in putting the book together, whenever you put a book together, you have to come up with a title. And the title I chose was Johnny Tent Boy's Turkey. Interesting title in that, why would I call it a tent boy? Well, that's where this boy lived for most of the summer. Again, as I said, his parents really were forced out of their rental because of, the great amount of summer rentals that go to tourists. And they were in the park, and they worked. They were off during the day. He had to entertain himself. And so he did with this little turkey, which eventually he gave the turkey the name Henry. And Henry became really his close companion for the summer. So Johnny Tent Boy's Turkey is the title. And I should give a little background on the story as we get started here. His name is Johnny Devlin. And as I said, he had to move with his family to the state park to live temporarily for the summertime. It's not an uncommon situation here on Cape Cod. So they established their campsite, and they had all of their possessions with them. Mother and father went to work during the day, and little Johnny Devlin was left alone. When children would come on the weekends to the park, Johnny would look to be, included as a playmate. Well, a lot of these children came with well-to-do parents who had really fancy RVs and wonderful trailers and lots of good toys. And it was difficult for Johnny to kind of move in with these because they felt that he was different. He didn't wear good clothes. His bicycle was kind of old and broken down. And they made fun of him. And at one point, one of the girls said, well, where do you live? I think she expected that he lived in a town somewhere away in a house. And he said, no, I live here. And he pointed to the tent. He said, I live there in that tent. Well, it was quite a surprise to the other children, and they thought it was funny. And they began to laugh at him and saying, I think we should call you Johnny Tent Boy. And that is what they called him. So when the weekend was over, Johnny was back by himself. And to entertain himself, he spent a lot of time riding his bicycle around the park. There weren't a whole lot of people in the park during the week. There was a small pond nearby, and he would observe the different animals that lived in the park. There was a great blue heron that came every day to catch fish, and Johnny saw the frogs, and he saw the turtles that were in the pond. He was fascinated by all of these animals. The park did contain lots of different types of wildlife, and in the nighttime, the skunks and the raccoons would come out to forage for food that was left over by the campers. And in the early morning, deer would come out on the big field and they would graze, and they were accompanied by rabbits. And Johnny was fascinated by these animals, but the animals that fascinated him the most were the turkeys. The mother hens would come through with their broods of perhaps 8 to 12 chicks, and Johnny would watch them, and they were the most interesting animals of all the ones that he saw in the park. And he looked forward to seeing them almost every day, especially as the chicks were growing. Well, one day when he was riding his bike, he came upon a chick that was really sick, and it was shivering. Obviously, it was ill, and Johnny was very surprised to see this. And at that moment, he heard a maintenance man coming by with a lawnmower to mow the edge right where that little chick was going to be. And so Johnny held up his hands and said, "Stop, stop." He didn't want that lawnmower to go anywhere near the little chick. Well, the maintenance man stopped and came over to where Johnny had showed him where the little chick was. And he's the one that explained to Johnny that sometimes the mother hen has so many chicks to take care of that when one is really sick, she has to leave it. And that was a hard thing for Johnny to really understand. Why would the mother of a little chick leave the baby? And yet this is what happened. Johnny didn't like that for an answer, and he didn't like the idea that perhaps that chick would be left alone. So he said to the maintenance man, "I'm going to take this chick back to my camp and maybe make it come back to life and be healthy." And the maintenance man said, "Well, you can try, perhaps try to keep him warm, and also put some water nearby, and feed him something, put something out, maybe some kind of grain or oats, and perhaps he'll be well." So Johnny did that. Johnny put the little chick in a box, and he put some old clothes nearby that the chick could be on, and then Johnny went to bed. Well, the next morning, he heard peeping coming from that box, and a little head came over the edge of the box, and that was the little chick. The chick had recovered during the night and was actually drinking water and looking for food. And Johnny put down some oats, and that chick went right to it and began to eat. Well, for a couple of days, Johnny watched that chick in the tent, and then he went outside. And when he went outside, the chick followed him. And it seemed like just about everywhere he went, that little turkey chick followed Johnny. Johnny thought it was fun to have a companion. Johnny sat down outside of the tent, and the little chick jumped right into his lap. And Johnny said, "You're a good friend, little chick. I'm going to give you a name. I think I'll call you Henry." And that was the name he gave to the little chick. While the two of them, all during the summer, explored the state park, riding around, Johnny put Henry right into the basket of his bicycle. They rode around the park and looked at just about everything. They became very close together. Well, it was getting into September, and one day Johnny's mother came home from work, and she was very excited. She said, "Johnny, one of my friends at work gave me the name of a person who has a house that we can rent year-round. And if we can rent that, we won't have to move again, and we can stay in one place." She said, "This is a wonderful thing." And Johnny thought it was a wonderful thing too. He was so happy. He thought he would have his own room. He could stay in the same school without having to move. So he hugged his mother, and he was very happy about that. But his mother said, there's one thing about this new house that we're going to go to. The owner has said that we can't have any pets. That means that you'll have to leave Henry here in the park. Well, that was about the worst thing that Johnny could have ever heard. He looked at his mother, he looked at Henry, and he said, we can't do that. I can't leave Henry. He doesn't know how to be a turkey. Well, there wasn't much else that his mother could do, and so that night Johnny did not sleep very well. And in the morning, Johnny's mother thought about it, and she said, maybe there's something I can do. And she got on the phone and she called a man who was going to have the house for rent. And she said to the man, my son has a pet bird, and I'm wondering, would that be all right if we took that pet bird into the house? Well, the man thought about it for a few minutes, and he thought, well, I don't want cats and dogs, but a little bird, I don't see where that would be much of a problem. I'll allow it. So Johnny's mother came back to the tent site, and she said, Johnny, we can bring Henry with us. I didn't tell him what kind of a bird it was, but he said birds are all right, and we'll do it. So the next day, the family went to see that house they were going to be able to rent for the whole year. Mother, father, Johnny, and Henry. And when they looked at that house, Henry said, I like it. Or Johnny said, I like it. And he said that Henry likes it too. So they moved into the house, and they found it just the way they wanted it. And Henry liked it. And just as school started, Johnny would get on the bus and go to the school, and Henry would be waiting at the door. He would watch Johnny leave in the morning, and then in the afternoon, he would be there so that they would get together again. And in that new house, Johnny had his own room, and Henry seemed to like that room as well. And this was a wonderful thing that they had. When Halloween came, Johnny took Henry and some of the friends in the neighborhood, and they all went trick-or-treating together. One of the things they didn't mention to Henry was Thanksgiving, and that holiday went by fairly quickly. When the winter came, Johnny and Henry played outside. They went sledding, Johnny skated, they made a snowman, and again, close friends, Johnny and Henry. When Christmas came, there were lots of presents under the tree for both Johnny and for Henry and the rest of the family. Well, the winter went by, and came April, as spring started. One morning, Johnny got up and Henry wasn't there. He went out into the kitchen and saw that the door to the outside was pushed open. And when he went into the backyard, he saw a hole underneath the fence that surrounded the yard. Henry was gone. Johnny went all around the neighborhood calling, Henry, Henry, but there was no answer from Henry. For several days he did this, before school and after school, but no Henry. All during the spring, during April, May, and into early June, Johnny continued to look for Henry with no success. But then one morning in early June, it was a Saturday, and Johnny had not gotten up. He was still asleep because he didn't have to go to school. And his mother came to the room and she said, Johnny, Henry's come back, and he's got a lot of other turkeys with him. So Johnny got up very excitedly, as you can imagine, and he went outside, and there was Henry, surrounded by a dozen little chicks. Henry strutted around very proudly, and those little chicks went right over to Henry, as if chicks would do for a mother hen. Well, what a surprise. Johnny's mother said, we were all wrong, Johnny. Henry was not a boy, he was a girl. He was actually a girl hen, and he should have been called Henrietta. And from that day on, that was what she was called with all of her turkey babies. So the story has a happy ending, and I think all stories for children should have a happy ending. And in this case, we've got a family that's come together. They've kind of endured some hardship on housing, something again that those of us that have roofs over our head should appreciate. And they were able to be happy together, and their turkey friend Henrietta stayed right along with them. And that is the story of Johnny Tent Boy's turkey.